I'm John McQuay with 8541 Tactical, and this is Mail Call Mondays, the show that answers your questions about precision rifles, optics, and equipment. We're continuing our series about getting our 260 project up and running for competition and precision rifle series and various other precision rifle matches. Last episode, we covered the basic setup on the rifle, what components we used, and why it's set up the way it is. Now, if you watched that previous episode, and if you haven't, I encourage you to go back and do so, you'll notice that there are just a couple of changes, and I'm going to touch on those really quickly. First of all, we now have a muzzle device on here. This is an AAC no-mount single-chamber brake. It's designed for 30 caliber rifles, but since 260 is smaller than 30 caliber, it will work just fine without any alteration. The main purpose of the brake is to protect the crown, but it also gives us some recoil reducing properties. Now, I didn't do a video on putting the brake on because installing it is very easy. It comes with a crush washer in the package, so all you do is you slide the crush washer onto your threads, you tighten down the muzzle brake until it's hand tight, go grab an adjustable wrench, put it on the outside of the brake, and tighten the brake down until the ports are appropriately aligned straight out to the side. There's no top and bottom on the brake, so it doesn't matter which way you get it as long as the ports are directly out to the side. So the crush washer prevents you from having to use a torque wrench or any of this nonsense. All you do is tighten it down with an adjustable wrench until it looks right. Now, you don't want to go 2-3 turns because then you can run into bottoming everything out and then you can run into torque problems. But if you're on your first turn, then the crush washer will allow you to time it and get the torque right all in the same shot without anything special. So we went ahead and screwed that on, torqued it down until it was timed correctly, which means the ports are facing the correct directions, and we're good to go there. You'll also notice that we now have an optic on board. What ended up happening, our base still has not come in. I really want to get the load workup done on this, and in order to get a load workup done, you have to have an optic on the rifle in order to keep it centered up on target. So we went ahead and grabbed a Weaver Tactical Picatinny base that we had from another project that is not using it right now. Threw it on here, dropped a scope and mount on that we had sitting around, and got it bore sighted. Without firing a shot, we just look down the bore and adjust the crosshairs until they are lined up with the center of the bore of the rifle. Now, this is not an ideal solution. Really, what I would like to have is I'd like to have our flat base in. That way, no matter what we decide to put on top of here, everything is good to go. What we ended up doing right now is we have a 20-minute of angled base and a 20 minute of angled mount on here, so we actually have a total of 40 minutes of angle cant built into this system. That's not ideal, but we were still able to get it bore sighted, so I think when we live fire we're still going to have enough adjustment to get the scope zeroed out at 100 yards. Now, the mount that we have on here is an Odlin Engineering odd mount, and as I mentioned, it has 20 minutes angle built in. It's a really good solid mount, has a bubble level in the back. We'll be doing a full review on this coming soon. We've been using it for quite some time now, and it's a really nice solid mount in the intermediate price points. The scope that we have on here is a Weaver Tactical 3 to 15 power rifle scope, and it is a really neat scope because it's very quick to get it zeroed and adjusted out. The turrets on top are zeroed by just this thumb screw up here. So you take the screw off, you can turn your turrets to get them zeroed out, drop them on, and dial this back on. So it makes it very quick to swap between different rifles. They are locking turrets, pull up to adjust, push down to lock. Nice parallax adjustment, has an illuminated mil-dot reticle, and it is an enhanced mil-dot reticle, I think is what Weaver calls it. So the mil-dots are actually hollow in it. It has a little bit of an open center, and it has 0.5 mil hash marks on it as well as mil-dots. So it's a really nice scope, and we have not gotten around to doing the full review on it either. That will be coming at some point. We've been using it for a little while on other rifle systems though, so we know it tracks accurately, it holds its zero well. And that's the key thing, is we're getting ready to do an accuracy workup on this rifle, so we need a scope that we know is good, that we've used on other systems and we know is not going to have any problems. That's the ideal situation to be in, to be able to use a scope that has been verified on a new rifle. Now, if you run into a situation where you have to use a new rifle and a new scope at the same time, then that's fine. Not everybody has scopes laying around or scopes that they can cannibalize off another rifle. Go ahead and set your scope up, get things lined up, go out, take it out and zero it. If you have problems though, if you're not getting the accuracy that you expect out of the system, then you're going to have an issue because you don't know if that is because of the rifle or because of the rifle scope. Either one can cause you to have accuracy issues downrange. So if you run into that situation, then it may be important for you to hunt down somebody that has a known good rifle scope that they can loan you for a little while. It doesn't have to be something top dollar, it just has to be something that they know can shoot within the accuracy requirements that you're expecting out of the rifle. So that's why the rifle is set up in the way it looks right now. The scope that we actually are intending to put on this rifle is on another rifle right now, and I'm verifying the rifle scope. It's on a rifle that I know will shoot very accurately. So we're shooting that combo together, and once I know that the scope tracks properly and is good to go, then we'll drop it on here. I didn't want to waste rounds through the barrel of this thing trying to get that scope dialed in and verified. 260s do have limited barrel life, so I'd rather verify a scope on a 308 that has a ton more barrel life than waste rounds down the tube of this rifle. Now that's enough about the rifle. This is the condition it will sit in until we get done with our load workup, and then we may swap the scope around. Now let's come down here and let's talk about the components I selected to work up our load and why I selected them. First of all, we'll start with the easy one. Federal gold medal match large rifle primers. Large rifle because that's what you need for 260. Federal gold medal match because I've used them in a variety of different calibers. I've used them for quite some time and they are accurate, they're reliable. I don't know that I've ever had one fail to light in a match rifle. So they are good to go in that aspect. The Remington 700 has a fairly good hit on the primer, so we're not really worried about that. We don't use any lightened firing pins or any crazy kind of firing pin assemblies. We use a factory firing pin assembly, factory firing pin spring, and it's got enough gas to light even hard military ammo. So the Federal Gold Medal Match primers won't cause us any problems at all. For brass, we are using Lapua 260 brass. It is a very, very high quality brass. Open the box here and show you. The consistency is great. Lapua brass has these little annealing marks at the shoulder of the case. That's kind of one of the trademarks of Lapua brass when you see it floating around. That's nothing to be concerned of. What it is that Lapua doesn't polish their brass after they anneal it. Those marks will polish off through subsequent firings running through the tumbler, etc. The marks will polish off and it'll be just nice shiny brass again. But Lapua is very consistent. One of the nice things about it is the flash holes in them are drilled, not punched, so you don't have any burrs coming out of the flash hole on the inside. Usually I have to run a separate operation to clean that flash away, but you don't have to do that in these. Now they do have a rather thick neck when compared to, for instance, Remington 260 brass, so you need to make sure that your chamber will accommodate that. Now on this chamber, we've looked at the print, we've looked at the brass. It should, on paper, work just fine. We do have another shooter here that has had his chamber cut with the exact same reamer to the same specs, and he was having some problems with Lapua brass, but I'm not sure if it was the brass or if it was the dies that he was using that was causing some accuracy issues. When he switched the brass and switched to a different die, he resolved the accuracy issues, but for now, we're going to give it a try. One of the other reasons that we are using Lapua is that it's really one of the only brands of 260 brass that is available right now. We're having a hard time finding Remington 260 brass, which has a little bit thinner neck and seems to work very well in the chamber that we have on this rifle. But it's just not available. It's not even on the shelves locally. I can't find it anywhere online. So we went ahead and got Lapua. Lapua is a little bit more expensive, but it is quality brass, and you'll get considerable bit of life out of it. Just try not to lose too many in the grass it matches, because that tends to start to hurt the pocketbook. The primers and brass were really the easy part. Those have everything that we use has an impact on accuracy, but those have the least amount of impact on the accuracy of the load versus what we're going to talk about next. Next, we are going to talk about our bullet. Now, for this, we selected the Hornady 140 grain match bullets. These are not AMAX, these are match, so they're hollow point boat tail bullets. These do not have the highest ballistic coefficient of the 6.5 bullets out there, but they're fairly close to the top. They run neck and neck with the AMAX. They have a really good consistency to the bullet quality. They are accurate in all the other varieties of the match bullets that we have tried out, and we're going to give them a try in this one. One of the main reasons that we went with the Hornady match over, for instance, Burger hybrids, which have a higher ballistic coefficient, is the Hornady match have a reasonable price point. The Burger hybrids are considerably more expensive. Also, the Burger hybrids are almost impossible to get right now. It doesn't matter if a bullet is more accurate or has a better ballistic coefficient if you can't get it. If you can't get it, you can't shoot it, and only impacts on targets count. So for now, we are going to run the 140 grain match. We may try the 140 grain AMAX a little bit later on. Both of them are usually readily available around these parts. The 140 grain AMAX I can find in most gun stores around here. Now, to launch these, we're going to go ahead and use Hodgdon H4350. This is a tried and true powder. It actually works really well in the 243 as well, so we're going to give it a go in the 260. This is a proven performer. Lots of guys out there are using the H4350 in their 260 loads, and really when it comes down to it, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. I could come out to the range with a stack of powders, different cartridges loaded up, and run through them all. But again, we're on a little bit of a time crunch here. The season's already started, and we want to get this rifle dialed in and ready to go. So we'll run with tried and true. Plus, I've got quite a few pounds of this sitting here in the shop, and I've got a line on where I can get more whenever I need to get it. And again, availability is key. Now, once we've settled on our components, we got to figure out how to combine them in a safe and efficient manner and get them tested through the rifle. So what I did is I went ahead and I plugged all my stuff into Quick Load, and I printed this nice little sheet out. Now, Quick Load is a piece of software for Windows PCs, and it is a little bit on the expensive side, but what it allows you to do is great. It's basically an interactive loading manual. You can go in and you can tell it what powder, bullets, what case capacity you've got, all the stuff, combine it, tell it what charge weight you're going to target, and it will output all kinds of stuff on it. What I've printed out here is a load table in half grain increments, and it will tell me what charges are safe, what the projected pressures for each charge are, what the barrel time for each one of those loads are, because I inputted that I was using a 24-inch barrel. And it will give you some fairly accurate estimates. Now, nothing can be taken for granted. We can't just look at this and go, okay, well, the charge I wanted to use is, it looks like it's going to be safe, and load it up and roll. We still need to work up, because we still need to shoot all this stuff, this entire combination, in the real world and step up incrementally. Now, I printed this out, and then to be on the safe side, I also went to Hodgdon's Data Center. They have redone their website. I'm not sure when this update went up, but it is a whole lot easier to go to the Reloading Data Center now and go through and input what you're using and get some recommendations for their powder. I went in and plugged in the 260 Remington cartridge. I told it I was using 140 grain class bullets and that I was going to use H4350, let it do its thing, and it kicked out, and it told me that the starting load for this combination is going to be 39 grains and that the max load is 42 grains. Now what that tells you is if you're not an experienced reloader, if you want to be on the absolute safe side, then when you're loading your test charges, you do not want to load less than 39 grains and you do not want to exceed 42 grains. Inside that window, you should be fairly safe. Now, ideally, again, if you're not an experienced reloader, what you're going to do is you're going to load up your first cartridge with 39 grains, your next cartridge with 39.5, your next with 40, so on and so forth, in half grain increments until you get to 42. What we are going to do, because the charge weight that we're actually targeting is 43.5, which is 3 steps above what the book maximum is. Now I can look across and see what my printout is from Quick Load here, and I can see that really that's exceeding the maximum pressure by about 2 steps, but we're using a fairly sturdy action, we're using a match barrel, and we're using very accurate components. And the key thing is we are going to work up to that, and we are going to look at pressure signs the whole way up. Now, usually when you look at book maximums, there is a bit of liability in writing a book maximum. So they err on the safe side, they err on the cautious side. If you don't know what you're doing, you need to err on the safe and cautious side as well. This is key, this is paramount, because this is something that can kill you. If you just blindly try to follow along and copy what we're doing without understanding what we're doing, you can seriously harm yourself. Reloading is one of those occupations that just a split second loss of concentration can end up with thousands of dollars worth of damage and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of medical bills. So please, I can't stress this enough, pay attention to what you're doing. Now what we are going to do, and I can't condone that you do this, what we are going to do is start at our starting charge, because I always like to start at the lowest charge. If for some reason there was something messed up in the action when Remington made it, in the barrel, if for some reason the rifling didn't spec out correctly, if the bore is tighter than it should be, if something happened when the chamber was cut, I want to know that with the lightest grain charge. So we're going to go ahead and load up a 39 grain cartridge. We're going to fire that. We'll then go to a 39.5 grain cartridge, fire that, and I'm going to continue to load again in half grain steps, 1 cartridge each, until we go to 43.5. Now I'm also going to load up cartridges 2 steps above 43.5. So that's well into the unsafe area as far as what the book says and what Quick Load says. Now as we go up, I'm going to look at every cartridge. Every time I fire a shot, even on the lowest pressure, I'm going to take that fired cartridge out. First of all, I'm going to note how the recoil feels, how the gun feels. Make sure that nothing sounds out of the ordinary, nothing feels out of the ordinary. I'm going to make sure that I have a shot on the target downrange. I'm going to eject my cartridge very carefully and gingerly into my hand. I'm going to look at it. I'm going to make sure that there are no bulges in the outside of the cartridge. I'm going to look at the head of the case. I'm going to look for any imprints where it's flattening out between the head of the case and the primer. We want to make sure that we still have that distinct gap between the primer and the cartridge case head. I want to look for any ejector marks. I want to see if I have that round circle starting to either cut in or extrude out from the head of the cartridge. That tells me that the pressure is getting high. I want to see if I'm getting any swipes, the marks in the head of the case are being obscured. All that needs to be crisp and clean. Just above the head of the case, I want to make sure that I'm not getting anything swelling out on the case walls. I'm going to look at the head of the case. I'm going to make sure that I don't have soot coming back, that the case is sealing up. Now on the first couple of shots, since they're low pressure rounds, I may have soot coming back, carbon coming back off the front of the case a little bit further than I expect, because that case won't really be opening up and sealing really well with the light pressure loads. As we get up into heavier pressure loads, I want to make sure that cartridge is sealing up well and I'm not getting carbon back into the chamber. This isn't an auto loader, so our cases should not be coming out absolutely filthy dirty. If they are, then there's something else going on and we need to stop. So we're going to be very careful with that. And the first 3 cartridges that we use, the 39, 39.5 and 40 grain cartridges, those 3 we're going to use to confirm our zero and make sure that we've got the scope dialed on. I really wouldn't use any 3 of those as my match load, so we're not really super cautious about making sure that they get into the group that we're going to use for our ladder test. Now for the rest of this, we're going to go down and we're going to go ahead and shoot the rest of the cartridges in order. Again, every time one comes out, I'm going to look at it, I'm going to inspect it, and I'm going to make sure that we don't have any nastiness, any crazy things going on with the cartridges, any marks, any swelling, anything of that nature. Every single cartridge, I'm going to check on that. I'm going to take my time. I'm going to make sure that I give the barrel some, or the chamber specifically, some time to cool off between cartridges, even up to 3 to 4 minutes between each cartridge. Since I'm only loading 1 cartridge for each charge weight, it's very important that every shot is a very deliberate, very accurate shot, and that I glean the most amount of information from each one of those. If you're not really sure with your ability to fire a well-aimed shot, then you might want to load up 2 or 3 cartridges of each charge weight and fire them, marking that those are both the same charge weight. That way, if you throw one out, you can say, okay, that was thrown out, or just have some extras on standby. So if you throw one, you can say, okay, I know I threw that one, I need to fire an extra shot. If you want to load up extras, like say you want to load up 3 of each cartridge, then what I recommend you do is shooting from low to high, shoot 1 string, 1 cartridge of each load. Then once you get to your maximum pressure, as high as you feel comfortable with, then you're going to turn around and shoot from high to low. When you get to the bottom again, low to high again. This spreads out the heat in the barrel and chamber across all the different loads, and it helps kind of normalize your test, helps average out the pressures for each one of your steps. Again, we're doing this kind of speedy, and I know where I want to end up on this, so this is really kind of just a check ladder test to make sure everything's running safe. Now I have kind of a benefit with the Smith that I used for this rifle. He has chambered several different 260s that our club uses with the same reamer, the same barrel twist. So we have some fairly accurate data on what charge, what load recipe should be accurate in this rifle. So I'm really cheating to start off. I already know that 43.5 grains should be safe in Remington cases with H4350 and 140 grain Hornadies in this specific setup. Now, because we're using a different primer and we're using a different case, we definitely need to use our load workup, and we may end up slightly different on this. We may end up at 43 grains, we may end up at 44 grains, we may end up somewhere in there getting our highest accuracy, but we don't know yet until we actually run it. So that's the purpose of not just accepting someone else's information, loading up the gun, and going. We're also changing something, and anytime you change anything in your load recipe, drop down 10% and come back up. Now, I'm not going to go through all the steps of actually loading this up because we did the entire Reloading 101 series, and I went into detail on reloading in that series. And then a couple of weeks back, we did another Mail Call Monday specifically on what I do for my match ammunition. We're going to load this just like I load any other match ammunition. So if you want to know the absolute details on that, please go back and check out that video. That's about it for actually the components we're going to use and how we're going to put our load recipe together. When we shoot the ladder test, we're going to shoot it at either 200 or 300 yards. It's going to depend upon how the wind is on that day. I like to test at the longest distance that I can test at, which will probably end up being 300 yards, because I can still get accurate shots. Wind is going to have a minimal effect. It's not going to blow bullets off the entire paper. but 300 yards is going to give me a large enough separation in the different velocities that I can go tell and see where they're starting to group together. And that's really what I want to see. I want to see where I get 3 or 4 shots that start to come and group together. Those that will group together under a minute angle are nodes that I want to look at. And what I'll usually do is I'll go down, and let's say when I'm doing this load workup, I have 42.5, 43, and 43.5, and they all group within 3/4 of an inch of each other at 300 yards. Well, I know I can run right down in the middle of that, pick the middle charge weight, and that's the charge weight I'm going to run in this, because if I get a slight variation on either side while I'm loading, it'll still be within the accuracy node of that charge. If I get a slight variation in temperature, in heat in the barrel, anything that's going to cause that pressure to fluctuate just a little bit, it'll still group right in there, right together. So that's really what we want to look for. We want to look for where those shots group together. You should have a nice long string of shots, and they'll spread out and come together, spread out and come together. And where they come together, those are your accuracy nodes. Now, it's important when we do this to pick an accuracy node that's a high velocity accuracy node, even if it is slightly less accurate than a low velocity accuracy node, because we need to keep this bullet cooking. We need to keep it flying down range at a fairly fast clip, because the less time it takes to go from the muzzle to the target is the less time wind has to blow it off. And that's really what we're trying to get, is we're trying to get a load worked up that will cheat the wind as much as possible without risking reliability. Key is reliability, second is wind cheating. So that's where we're at. Hopefully this week, during the week, we're going to get out and we'll have a chance to actually shoot our workup. We'll try to videotape that, and then we'll come back to you next Monday and we'll talk about the actual workup, how it went, and what charges we selected for it. So if you haven't seen the reloading videos, go back, watch Reloading 101. We'll leave a link down below to that whole playlist. We'll also leave a link down below to how I load my match ammunition, that Mail Call Monday episode, and that will give you something to go over. If you got any questions or comments on the components we used or the process, please leave them in the comment section below or send them to us on Facebook or Twitter. If you like the video, like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, get out and shoot!